The last couple of weeks, Kath, we've been speaking about living out of overflow versus living out of performance. And, in our conversation leading up to today's recording, we've sort of been discussing that there are so many things that take us away from living out of overflow or living out of the desires of our heart, living out, in a way that takes us away from our true authentic self. And so today we thought, okay, we need to explore this further, and we're going to talk about something that takes us away from living out of overflow. Do you want to share what that is?
Yes, so I was just sharing, Elle, with you earlier that I had a client this week who shared a story that I've actually heard many, many times before. And it's
Mm,
my story, it's potentially your story. Like there's so many of us women with the same story. And it had me thinking that, oh my gosh, this is one of the things that so commonly draws us away from living, from our authentic self or our overflow.
yeah.
And it's this whole topic of obligation. So
Mm,
this client I was, sitting with was sharing and just sharing that especially as a woman, like as a mum, as a daughter, as a sister, as an employee, as a friend, she had got to the point where life was just overwhelming. And
yeah.
it's overwhelming because, and her language was this language of I have to, I should, I must, I need to,
Mm,
in all directions of life. And
yeah.
it's the language of obligation. So feeling obligated to always be available for the needs of everybody else. And, I'm using
Mm,
such generalizing language, but that's the language that goes around in our head.
yeah.
And so it just had me considering and thinking that obligations or perceived obligations is something that so often we can get so caught up with. And
Mm,
before we notice it again, we've spent most of our day busy with things that we hadn't set out to be busy with at the start of the day.
mm. Things that we feel obligated, even if we
Yeah.
haven't used that word. Like, I don't get up in the morning and think, oh, I'm obligated to pick up Jackson from school at this time of day and obligated to drive him to work. It's something that I assume that I just get up and have to do. But as the day and the week goes by, I realize in my mind, I am obligated to do a lot of things, and they do
Yeah.
take me away from the things that potentially I feel called to do or need to do, want to do, etc. So our obligation is huge as women. I love that you brought that up, that it's a story that's potential for most of us, because unless we stop and pay attention as women, we have a lot that we put on our plate.
We do, and it's challenging because as with the previous few weeks, a lot of these topics are really nuanced. It's
Mm,
not a black and white. It's not
mm,
there's a right way and a wrong way, or a good way or a bad way. It's a lot of it is around balance and choice and awareness. And I
awareness.
think, listening to you, it's also a lot of it is about the way we're telling ourselves the story of it all in our heads. And
Mm,
so, for my client, she was really feeling a sense that there's so much that she just has to do that she
mm,
feels choiceless over.
yeah,
And it can be so easy to get caught up in that. And
yeah,
I love your share, like, oh, I have to take my kid to school. Yes, and it is like if you don't take him to school, how else is he going to get to school?
yeah.
And yes, there's a bus, there are friends, there are other ways. But at the end of the day, if I were to ask you, like, honestly,
Mm,
um, is that, taking your children to school and picking them up from school, like, is that important to you?
mm. I would say yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's so funny how, so, it's like if someone else came and said to you, "Oh, sorry, you can't take your kids to school, or you're not going to take your kids to school any longer because, I'm going to do that for you." You'd probably go,
Mm,
"No, but I want to." It's because I mean, my kids aren't at home anymore, but I remember those were such
mm.
wonderful times of conversation and connection and, meeting them where they're at and really getting like
Yeah.
sort of the litmus test of how are they actually
Mm,
doing, those moments to and from school. And so, however, we know deep down in our heart we want to and we long to to be there for our children and to, use the example, take them
Mm.
to school. But the language that comes out of our mouth and the thoughts in our head is, oh, I have to.
Have to. So automatically that stirs a different sense within. Like if I remind myself, oh, I actually want to do this and I enjoy it. Or I say to you, oh, Kath, I've got to do this. I've got to drive Jackson to whatever else is next on his list of things to do. It's a different state. It's a different feeling. It's a different everything, but it's still I still feel it as an obligation.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the
Interesting.
thing, like listening to my client, I think the challenge comes with when there are people in our world, and all of us have this, and whether
Yeah.
it's friends, family, work colleagues, whatever, that uh their needs out there. So
Mm,
people are needy and they'll
mm,
come to us and ask if we've got a means to meet them in their need, in their place of need. And often as women, we are a resource to do that. So we say,
mm.
yes, sure, we'll do that.
Of course.
However, if we haven't spent time considering our big picture and our what we want to intentionally be busy with and where we want to intentionally head to, we can be so quick to say yes out of this place of wanting to meet people's needs. It's kind of the rescuer
Mm,
in us comes out, and we just want to rescue
mm,
everyone and everything
of
around us.
course. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's like such a recipe for overwhelm and for
Yeah.
feeling just so thinly spread.
Mm,
And then when we in that state, then we often get reactive and we just, exhausted. And this is where my client was. So I think part of it is probably a conversation of, okay, yes, there are obligations,
mm,
but what are the obligations in life that actually are things that I want to say yes with and those things still keep me headed intentionally in the direction I want to move into? And what
mm,
are the other obligations that actually, you know what? Yes, there is a need, but what if it's not my place to meet that need?
mm.
I don't need to always be the one that goes, yes, sure, I'll do that for you. And
Okay.
so when my client and I were having this conversation, her first response to that was, but that's how people know me. I've
Mm,
always said yes to things. So if I suddenly start saying no, people are going to
mm,
suddenly be offended. They're not going to like it. You're not going to,
mm, mm,
and then I'm going to feel like a failure,
mm.
was the response.
Okay. Hmm. You know what even comes up for me in that space as well. Sometimes if we're not, like if it's part of our value system where we want to help people, like if we are drawn to help and encourage others, and we've got somebody right in front of us who's asking us for something and it's aligning with our values, but we simply can't do it for everybody, like
Yeah.
it can be a real struggle. Because
Yeah.
let's say in work, for example, we our roles change and we've got a gazillion things on our plate and we just can't possibly do it all. But our value is that we want to do well in our workplace. It's who we are, whatever it is. How then do you start to say no or to change so that you're living out of overflow, but because if it aligns still with your value, but you can't possibly do everything, do you sort of see where I'm saying that there's a struggle?
Yeah, so I've got an example that might
Okay.
might
Might
help.
help here.
Okay, so it's a pretty recent example. So I had this other client that I was working with, and
Okay.
my intention, my heart, my where I feel my strengths and my gifts
Hmm.
are in the coaching space.
Yeah,
It's just a world that I love. It's just it delights my heart. I mean, don't need to explain to you, but anyway,
we
so
know.
that's
Hmm.
that's the role. This client then had other needs that went beyond the coaching space.
Okay.
And these other needs, and my client was in a place where I was, looking at the other needs. And at the time that I had this particular client, I didn't have a complete full diary of clients. So I had the capacity and the time.
Right.
So, and the other needs that this person had, I could meet. So I sort of said, oh, if that's a gap where you need someone to
Some
help,
support.
and some support, I'm
Hmm.
happy to fill that too. And it's interesting because even from the moment I said yes, there was the stirring on the inside of me going, is this wise, But I kind of thought my heart was, this person needs the help. I can give it, know what to do, and
Mm,
so stepped into this role. What it did though is it completely diluted our coaching.
mm,
It really shifted me into another whole role, which at the end of the day, frustrated me quite a bit because it wasn't what my intention is, and that was, to coach. So I ended
mm.
up, a couple of weeks down the line, like this whole role turned into something completely different, and suddenly, you know, the expectations had
The
shifted completely.
obligations.
And yeah, and the obligations. So just because there's a need and because I am able to meet the need doesn't
Yeah.
always mean that it's wise or it's yeah, wise. So
Mm.
I don't know if that answers your
Well, it does.
question.
And I think it's when we sit in this space for a moment and we consider, when we come to the realization, oh my goodness, I've got lots of obligations. When
Yes.
we sit in that space, and even though I love what you just said, even though you can and are able to do those things, it's not always wise and it doesn't have to be you to do it. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess for our listeners who are sitting there sort of thinking about their own obligations and living out of overflow and being their authentic self, if we're feeling overwhelmed, if we're feeling like we've got lots of obligations and we're being pulled and we're not able to be or do all of the things that are on our heart that we know are for us to do, perhaps it's time to sort of pause for a moment. And I had to do this last year, Kath. When I started working in the rehab, it was the same thing for me. I had this huge need and desire to do all of these things. And I realized as the year went by, oh my goodness, I've said yes to way too many things and I've become obligated to all of these things and I can't possibly do everything. And I needed to
Yeah.
pause because I got into that place of overwhelm. And I guess anybody who's feeling that bit of overwhelm, perhaps it's good for a moment to pause and
Yeah.
have a look. Have a look at what's taking our time. Have a look at what is we're feeling obligated or that we must and should and need to do and challenge it. Get curious for a minute. Must I? Should I? Is there a need to? And get curious. What could it look like to not
Yeah.
do all of those
Yeah.
things?
And it's sometimes scary to draw back because once we've sort of said yes, to then turn around and go, actually, I've
Yeah.
changed my mind. I'm going to say no. It's not easy. It's not a comfortable
No.
place to be. And for my client, when we were unpacking this the other day, and I was challenging her as to does she always
Mm,
need to say yes to all these things? And her
mm,
comment back was, if I start saying no, then people are going to that's not they don't know me that way. I've
mm,
always been the yes person. So people are
mm,
going to, their nose is going to be put out of joint. They're not going to like
mm.
it. And sometimes it is it's almost like reshaping other people's expectations of us, which is not an easy place to be at.
Mm, mm.
However, so what are our options? Our options are, well, we just keep doing what we've always done and just keep
Yeah.
being the person that says yes to everybody.
And
But
gets it all
then
done.
it
Mm,
gets it all done. But at the end
mm.
of the day, we feel like over time, it erodes the essence of who we are. It
Yeah.
erodes, robs us of our joy, our happiness.
Mm,
And like for my client, I mean, she was quite teary,
mm.
finding herself in this place of not only overwhelmed, but also, how did I get here? Sort
Yeah.
of was the question she was asking. And it's so not where I would choose to be if I had choice. And so even just the reminder of, but what if
Mm.
you,
True.
gently remind yourself that you actually do have some choice.
Mm.
And yes, when we first start considering the choice, it it's normal that it feels uncomfortable because we do feel like, oh gosh, we're going to start letting other people down by
Yeah.
you know but someone once said something to me that really helped me to reframe this and to shift
Okay.
the perspective, And they said, well, if you're not the one that keeps saying, like, what if your yeses, your continued yeses all the time, rob somebody else of the opportunity to say
Say
yes?
yes.
And that was helpful because, I kind of thought, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I think we say yes out of a place of wanting to be generous. But if
Mm,
our generosity is actually taking us in the opposite direction, well,
mm.
it means we just not doing anything actually from a, when you lose your heart in it and you're not doing anything from a place of your heart anymore, it's noticeable.
It is noticeable because it's at the expense of things that are
Yeah,
values. It's at the expense of really who you are. And I love what you just said with the reframe, because as I look back over life, because I used to be a big yes person, especially in churches, yes, yes,
yeah,
I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. And I realized that, and as I reflect back over life, if and when I did say no, there was always somebody ready to do it. There was somebody else. But if I kept saying yes, there would be no need in that space anymore for the other person to, ready to fill. And so if you look over life, there is always somebody else will do it. Somebody else will pick it
yeah,
up. And it's great to be reminded that we don't have to do everything all of the time. We don't have to be yes people all of the time.
all the
I had a
time.
gentleman one time say to me, Al, you can say no. And I was like, oh, really? Like it literally did not occur to me that you actually could say no to things. Um, yeah, I was only young then too, though. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, I think it's really important to start to consider when we're overwhelmed, what's truly going on.
So the other metaphor that's come to mind just listening to you share, which I think, if you're listening, you've definitely heard this before because it's not a new one under the sun for sure. It's the metaphor of staying in your lane, and if you
Mm,
sort of see an athletics track with, 12 lanes or however many lanes there are, and let's just say the things, what if living from overflow meant you ran in your lane and the things
mm,
that were in your lane to do were the things that you've been created to do, and you can do them in your own unique blend of things
yeah.
better than, because it's the things that God's put in your lane to do. And yes, you are able to do things in six or seven other lanes, but if you stay in overflow, it's your lane. And how
Mm.
often I've got so messy and sprawled myself across everybody
Every
else's
lane.
lanes.
And then you're hurdling and doing backflips and doing long jump as well.
And then, trying to work out why on earth it feels so overwhelming. So that's also
Yeah,
like a nice
it's
metaphor,
helpful.
a helpful metaphor, just as a reminder. Yeah.
Mm, yeah. And there's seasons too. There's seasons where, we do things for a season,
Yeah.
but just like summer, autumn, winter, spring, things come to an end and the
Yeah.
new season comes around. And sometimes we'll find ourselves doing things because that's the season we're in.
Yeah.
And knowing when then it's finishing and when a new season has begun, I think is also really timely as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
So, there's so many. I think at the end of the day, the bottom line is there's so many things in this world that draw us away from the intention that we have to
mm,
stay in our lane and
mm,
be who the woman that we desire to be, what's in
mm,
our heart. And I think the encouragement is that, yeah, as women, we've probably all been there. We've all been in that situation where we've spread ourselves thin and we find ourselves completely, in the outside lane when our lane is, in the middle or the inner lane.
mm,
And that's
mm,
okay. It's okay.
mm,
And I think no matter where you are right now, it's
mm,
it's beautiful how you say just pause and at least ask the question or consider the question.
mm,
How much of my world and my time and my day am I giving focus to obligations? And are they the obligations that are in my lane, or are they
mm,
obligations that actually are for somebody else?
mm.
And what do I want to do about it?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
What am I going to do about it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily, it's not a quick fix, right? It's begins there. What am I going to do about it? What am I willing to do about it? And starting to take those steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you're listening and you're thinking, gosh, what am I going to do about it? And you need help as a starting step. Al and I always say each week our doors
Mm,
are open as coaches. This is the space we
yeah.
love to work in. And if you're ready to make changes and you're just not sure how
Not
or where to
sure.
start, then we'd love for you to
Mm,
connect with us.
yeah. Yeah. 100%. And, you know, we do that together before we jump on and record. We're connecting with each other and asking each
Yeah.
other questions, and it's a privileged space to be in. And we'd love to do that with our listeners, should that be something you're interested in. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this week, go and consider, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to
It's
do the
always been
same.
great, Al. Yeah.
Mm.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Bless you.